Good evening, folks. Very glad to be back this week. Been looking forward to it, especially following on from the weekend at the show. Just want to take this opportunity to thank you all again last week for the auction. It was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was a massive success in raising them funds for the Koi Club. I am going to be doing the draw for the raffle this evening as well. I have actually pre-recorded it. I've done it just before I've come on and uploaded that video. So yes, I think probably about midway through we'll do that and see who the lucky winners are for that one. And yeah, other than that, the show. So I hope you got there. If you did, let me know in the comments what you thought to it. I was absolutely blown away with it. In all honesty, I can't really say that about many shows from recent years, but I mean the atmosphere was just absolutely buzzing. By the way, I am on my own this evening, so if you managed to, and we have got a guest as well, forgot to mention that bit. Joe Mitchell's back on with some more questions because I think we all thoroughly enjoyed that. But if we don't get many comments and bits coming up on screen, or I seem a bit distracted, forgive me, because I've got a lot going on here. But yeah, the show. I mean, wow, just wow. It was heaving. There was people, there was new koi keepers, there were new koi keepers showing for the first time. The team did an absolutely amazing job of putting it all together. The atmosphere, the wife's watching, hello. Yeah, they did an amazing job of putting it together. Like I said, the atmosphere between dealers, hobbyists, the show guys, everybody was just superb. Great harmony, and I think it showed in the atmosphere that it created in the hall, to be honest with you. So yeah, there we go. Like I say, hats off to them guys. Hats off to James, who ultimately sparked all this, and I think, to be fair, brought everybody together, and he got a nice win as well with GC with his Shintaro Sanki. So really pleased for him with that one. Yeah, I could see some comments coming through. Absolutely brilliant. Highlight for me, the Shisui. Very glad you said that, Craig. That's actually one of my clients' customers' fish. Superb Marihiro Shisui that won Best Deutsch, I believe. So nice to see a variation. I think they kept the water absolutely spot on. Like I say, I just cannot fault anything they did. And yeah, already had a few chats with James, and I mean already the heads all focus, all attention on next year to see what we can do to make it better. So really looking forward to it. I think give it 2 or 3 years, that will be, an absolute spectacle. We've already been discussing what we can do as Koi Talk there for next year, which I'm looking forward to. Got some cracking ideas for that one to really add to it. So yeah, put the date in the diary already, folks. I think that's really not going to be an event to miss come next year. So happy days. So just for those who are still joining, because I see there's more and more popping in, I am going to be doing the draw for the Koi Show raffle this evening. Just to say again, I have already, because I couldn't get the spinner live on the screen, so I've pre-recorded it, and I'll show you that. I'll share that video about midway through. So yeah, have got Joe. I'm going to bring him in a second. If you've got any questions, folks, feel free to fire them in. I know last time, to be fair, with Joe, it run quite over. I've not got any Koi appreciation stuff this week, so not had a chance to get it loaded in. So if we do have any spare time, we'll look back through some of the old questions. Colin, who needs Steve? I need Steve. So there we go. We're lucky to be, where we are right now. So there we go. Right then, let's get. Oh dear, and now I'm getting told off, folks. No going over later. Your dinner's on. Cool. So that'll be getting thrown in bin if I'm home late. So there we go. Better be calling it. Right, let's get Joe in and see what Joe's got to say. How you doing, Joe?
Well, I'm just scribbling off some of these questions so you don't get in trouble with misses now. Yeah, I'm good, mate. Thank you.
Yeah, so just remind me that I need to be clocking off, because we don't want to see me dinner in bin, do we?
definitely not. Definitely not.
Nah, so how's things then, Joe?
Yeah, I've turned one of my pumps off since the last call. Last little one of these.
Just remind people what the sort of issue was, what my advice was, and where you've got to with it. Then I think that'd be quite useful.
Yeah, I think essentially I had two 20k pumps on and a 10k on a 2,000 gallon pond, and I was I think the water was essentially just blasting through my filters, and I suppose not really having retention time. So I've kind of switched it around. So I'm only pulling 30,000 between a skimmer and a bottom drain now, and 20,000 is going back over the shower and then into chamber and back over the shower again. So it's a lot more retention time. I put a little bit more media in the shower, and I invested in one of them Hannah nitrite testers. And I tell you, I can't recommend them enough, because the amount of times I've got the drop test and held it up against a bit of white plastic trying to figure out is that 0.25 or 0.3 or whatever. I could really see week by week it going down in feeding the same grams every day. I could see a big difference straight away. So the advice definitely worked with having a bit more retention time and slowing everything down. And I hadn't seen any issues with stuff landing on the bottom like fish poo and that kind of stuff. That everything's clean. So I think it was overkill.
Good. And I think just before you get into it, this is something, because it's obviously going to be massively topical regards sort of running costs as well and flow rates. And I really do think people, if this is a concern for people out there, before you go hitting that big red button and shutting your pond down, please just consider, is there excess? Is there overkill? Look what you actually need as a bare necessity to run your pond successfully, and not just the things you possibly think are adding benefit but maybe aren't, but costing a lot of money to run. I've actually run some figures here, been analysing some bills, and it's quite phenomenal what this entire site is running for electricity-wise. It shocked me. It's absolutely bowled me over what it's running for per month just for electricity. And that's with 60 ponds that are all individually filtered. So just about every pond has got pump UV, air pumps, multiple in some cases. It's incredible. And when I think about it, we're talking very low wattage pumps to achieve turnover once every 2 hours. I even had this, just a great example. I spoke to some guy who wanted some advice earlier this week, and he'd been given a lot of poor advice, to be honest. 3,500 gallon pond that had two pumps running to two easy pods and back in, and then somewhere in that he'd sort of got a shower and a tempest as well. So he wanted the advice on how he could simplify it and make the whole.
I think we've lost Ricky. See, this highlights the need for Steve. How can I entertain you now? Whoa. What's yellow and dangerous? I'll make a joke. Shark-infested custard. Yeah, I was at the show this weekend. I was dabbling in benching koi. So that was definitely interesting. Measuring koi. And then I was there throughout the weekend in the centre ring on Sunday, trying to manage bits of water changes and that kind of stuff. We had a few randy males on Sunday. So if anyone were confused as to why any of the vats were covered over, what can happen at koi shows is change of temperature, big water changes, that kind of stuff can almost get koi spawning, and that's what we had. So it was nothing to worry about. If anybody saw any covers on the vats, it was all in hand, and we were managing the ammonia and water changes, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was all round a good weekend. I think I loved the Grand Champion. I loved it when I saw it down at the National. What happened to the big chag? I think that just got taken away. It was a big fish in a small vat, and just for the safety of the fish, we made a decision for it to go home. A beautiful fish. Got to commemorate the keeper of that koi. To get a fish over 100 meters, I think you've got to hold your hands up and say, wow. But yeah, it was absolutely fine. It wasn't anything massive. Did I camp with the rest of the crew, and how did I find it? Yeah, I did camp. My little tiny tent. My feet were hanging out of the edge, getting frostbite in my little tent. But yeah, we had Lee, Koi Soldier there, Anthony from Crafty Koi, both fantastic blokes. But yeah, it was a really fantastic weekend. I think next year we're going to need more volunteers, more people to help us break down, put up. But yeah, we've got massive plans for next year. Did a fish die at the show? No, nothing like that. Nothing at all. We used ammonia binders in our water, so we were completely free of most nasties in the water. I mean, a lot of it goes over my head in terms of, but we were using binders, so everything that went into our water were completely ammonia free, nitrite free, and we were doing tests almost all the time. We had a guy called Steve Roundtree who was testing the waters. The work those guys do, testing the water is crazy. No trickle in, trickle out. We didn't have a trickle in, trickle out. I think it's something we'd like to explore because it'd save us a lot of faffing about, a lot of labour in terms of having people in the show ring. But something next year we can definitely explore, possibly. I think the toss up with a trickle in, trickle out, I suppose, is how quick do you trickle in, and if you're using pre-filters, you've got to trickle in where the pre-filter, I suppose, is actually taking out the nasties, the chlorine, and then the ammonia and all that other stuff. Yeah, a lot of people said the Northeast show. A lot of people that were at our show showed up at the Northeast as well, and there were no issues with the fish that came back from there. I hope I'm doing a good job entertaining people. I'm not Ricky, although yeah, I'll fill in until he gets back. Ricky's had a power cut for anybody who's tuning in, so he should be back anytime. So go on then. Anybody who attended the show this weekend, what was your favourite koi there and why? Let's see the answer. I've got a favourite. Oh, here he is.
Oh wow, disaster! mate, you've done a stellar job there. The power, just everything just tripped out. Now our main fuse board is the most horrendous noise.
Oh God.
Stressful. Sorry about that, folks. But yeah, cracking job, mate. You can take my role if you want.
Worries. I'll just say that a couple of people have said the Benny Goy at the show, with the people that liked that fish there, it was grown from about this big by a guy I know. So that was.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The Benny Goy that won Best Non-Go Sankey, I think it was about 8 centimetres and grown from about this big. So that was nice.
Yeah, phenomenal. I can see I'm getting some pretty decent banter for that one. So, yeah. Quality. That's stressful, that, and it's not over yet. I've never heard a fuse board making a noise like that in my life. So, dinner might be going in bin yet. But, yeah, enough about what I was saying. We're on limp mode with internet as well, from what I can see. That's not gone back on properly. Jesus. Go on, Joe. What questions we got lined up, mate? What else was wrong?
So, what do you think to using colour food with metallic fish or ogons? So, like platinum ogons, yamabukis, makashis. Would you use colour food with those type of fish?
Are you also including like Karimoyo type stuff, kikisuis, yamatos, or
yeah, kajaku, I suppose.
Right.
Yeah, that's stuff. Yeah.
Metallic fish definitely need it, but this is where you've got to look at that. The wife's impressed. Joe show, love it.
There we go.
Love it. We need to brand that one. Yeah. So what I would be doing with colour food, and this is where again mixed ponds come into it, and it's always finding that balance. So when you talk sort of kikisui, Deutsche Yamato, things like that, we sort of Benny where you need some intensity. Absolutely, you're going to want a lot of colour food down them to maintain the colour level to the sort of standard, where you see them in pictures and all Japan level. Absolutely mind blowing. You need it. You need to push it down, and they need a lot of intensity. There are groups in there. Either kajaku, I would feed it, for example. Mukashi, I wouldn't waste my time. Because for the amount they eat as well, it's just not necessary. There's nothing really there to enhance. It's more a sumi factor that's going to enhance them, sort of water hardness and things like that. So Yamabuki, yeah, tough one. Typically no, because what I wouldn't want to do is there's a chance with some Yamabuki you can tip them and go more orangey in colour. So I'd tend to leave them alone. Parachina, yeah, again, you don't want Parachinas with any white fish because you're going to ruin that shiroji a little bit with the colour food, although it's recoverable. But you can see if you've got a mixed pond, ultimately, you're not going to avoid all this. It's only really commercially when you're doing it and you've got a lot of ponds around you, you can get all the separation and things like that you need. So, yeah, it's tough. What I would say is in a general pond, I would probably be aiming for about a third colour food.
Yeah.
So something with sake colour because it's aggressive. I don't think there'd be any harm in going 50-50. But realistically, probably about 25% to a third will give you a nice bit of colour support, colour enhancement without trashing anything. Just find the nice balance between it all. If you can separate, say you've got a growing on tank, growing on pond, something, and you're just raising sort of Deutsch metallic varieties, then you could be talking the realms of 100% colour food to really get them popping. It's the hard work. They are hard work, and you always have to remember it's about being progressive with it, because if you fall too far back with the colour, all that's going to happen is over time you're going to have to keep pushing it. You're going to have to spend. So if you've grown a fish for 6 months and fed no colour food, likely the colour will drop off. So it's going to take you then, you've got to recover that before you can then start progressing it up to the next level.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, always better to be having a bit in there, even in the mixed pond, because I'd use it for the summer, you withdraw it for the winter, and you'll just recover any sort of tinting of shiroji after that point.
And would you say a similar thing with like shiro? If you have a pond, if you were like preparing for a show and you've been feeding colour food, and you wanted to show the shiro, is it a bit of a risk then to be putting in colour food like leading up to a show, or would it not be something
this is always the fun bit, isn't it? 'Cause if you've just got one shiro in your pond, I wouldn't be making my judgment based on that one fish.
Yeah.
Unless it's the only fish you take into the show and you're all in on it, then in that case I'd change that mindset. But typically, no, I'd be thinking I've got to do what's best for the entire lot. Yeah, the nice thing is here is that, you know, shirogi, the quality of the shirogi will also, it's not just affected by colour food. Really good shirogi, what you tend
thing is, I don't know a second joke if he's gone again.
Oh, there we go. Back. It's that internet connection nightmare. Yeah, so it's the colour foods, the shirogi, different spirulinas will affect it. So if you're using cheap grade spirulina, which is out there, that will tint the shirogi a lot more, and then also it'll take longer to reverse the damage that it does.
Yeah.
Whereas I really do find this, because I've done it and done it a lot, sake colour used in a mixed pond really didn't impact shirogi that much at that sort of 25% ratio, but it did give what it needed to all the other fish. The difference again in the quality of the foods and the impact that it has.
I think I saw a video of you on YouTube using the super red food, and you could really see the Benny massively.
No, I never actually got around to using it. That's still in the warehouse, waiting to be done. I'm gonna have a play around with that this year. But it was the whitening food that I used with the Okawa Shiros from last year, and I was well impressed with what that did.
Yeah.
Within 2 weeks, I'd noticed a big difference, and that wasn't from colour food. It was literally just from using just the growth, the sheer intensity of the environment and all the rest. Dial-up modem, absolutely legend. It's full of it tonight, Colin, isn't they?
I know. So, if we're talking about somebody who wants to try and show fish, would you have a routine leading up to a show in terms of, would you be using clay heavy? Would you let your pond go green or that type of thing?
Yeah, I think the interesting bit here with this is you really want to be looking at show preparation. I wouldn't think anybody would be doing it over here how I would be. So this would be show preparation, possibly working to show. So we talk about this from a sort of Japan side as well, where the shows are tied around the season, so they're not interrupting a growing season or anything like that, which I think I've mentioned before. You know, it's tough because we've got the big commercial aspect to the shows over here. That finances a lot of making it happen. In Japan, that's not the case. They're financed by people paying to enter the fish. The entry fees are incredibly high. You pay per fish. Just for a small sort of 15 centimetre fish, you can be paying 70 quid to enter it. So you can see how quickly fees can build up, and they cover the show. Yeah, there's a few commercial stands, but they're not needed. Therefore, they can have the choice of putting the shows where they need to be, i.e., you know, after the harvest season or after the fish have been harvested and have time to be conditioned. So, but preparation in my mind is 12 months. Yeah, it's a full plan on where we need to get that fish to prior to the conditioning period, which is going to be growing and getting body and bringing colour up, probably working on Benny more than anything. You push to that point and probably get the fish to the point where they're a little bit, in my opinion, too heavy on the body almost, because bearing in mind we should be looking at having a full 7 days without food, really, for prep. And in that, what you have to do in this preparation process is think, right, well, we're focused on building body, getting growth and enhancing Benny. So at that point now we need to clean up the shirogi and get that looking its absolute best. and then start bringing the sumi in and everything else, because growth temperatures are not conducive to sumi development. That's where 18 degrees is a real sweet spot in all this. So you'd sort of have your growing season, work towards then bringing and holding the pond around 18 if you could. And at that point, 18, 20 tops, at that point you can really, you'll still be feeding, but not as aggressively, and probably working on the food, conditioning the shiroji, and hoping that obviously the drop in temperature starts bringing the sumi to its best. And you just keep going round and round like that, really. You won't be enhancing the Benny at that point, and you do all this to the point where then at 18 degrees, it's a nice temperature that when you stop food for a week, you're not going to lose too much, because believe me, if you stop feeding for a week and your water's 24 degrees, you will absolutely rip the weight off them. It's phenomenal how it happens, and it'll just be that competitive edge for the weight, just that extra bit that gives it the imposing character, sort of be lost. So sort of 18 degrees, then you stop feeding for a week, and at that point as well, what you'll find is you'll really condition all the skin up as well. But what it can also be worth doing, potassium is a really good thing to be using if you're confident in using it, because you can, if you get that at the right time in your conditioning process, you're gonna basically knock back any old mucus and get some new regrowth, and that's going to be the really, really shiny stuff. But with PP, again, it's not something you just muck around with willy-nilly. You've got to know what you're doing. You've got to get the dosage right for it to have that impact as well. If you don't get the dosage right, you're not really going to knock the mucus off in Northland, and that'll have all just been a waste of time.
It's really
long process.
It's really interesting, but one of the reasons I ask about using like the clays and stuff like that, I suppose, and you've answered it for me there with the mucus, is when I was benching fish and actually like measuring them in the bowls, some of them felt like sandpaper, and you could tell that they hadn't been conditioned, as well as some that were, when you felt the fish, they were silky and really mucusy, and you could tell the condition of them totally different. And I suppose that goes into preparation, doesn't it?
Mucus is mucus and skin luster. It goes hand in hand. Skin luster is mucus. It's just what you're doing with it and how you're controlling it and conditioning it. And it's sensitive stuff. It's really sensitive stuff. So, but prep wise, this isn't a case of even just like a month before doing a bit of something. Realistically, if you've got a collection of fish, what you should be doing is thinking, unless you've got multiple fish in there, but realistically thinking one show a year, this is what I'm doing, this is the date, and planning your whole cycle around that one show.
Okay. If you were planning, again, to show koi, would it be an option for you to keep males and females in your main pond where you had your main show koi, having males and females? Or is it too much of a risk for you? You've got your 12-month plan for it, and if one of them starts spawning, you potentially got damage, and it's going to be your best one that gets a bruise, isn't it? That's the way it works.
Again, for both groups of fish, keeping them separated, or one or the other, is the absolute best way. I'm not going to argue that. However, it's not realistic for most people, and when you've got a very controlled environment, you can control the spawning, because it's a lot of natural elements that stimulate the spawning. So, and I've seen mixed ponds for absolutely years where not anything's going off, because sometimes you'll get some female fish which are more conducive to spawning when they're naturally very eggy. I believe those fish sort of attract it a little bit more, whereas if they're not, you sort of like show caliber bodies where they're a lot more refined. I tend to think that's less of an issue and less conducive to it happening. It's not something, I've got mixed ponds here. There's absolutely no signs of it, no interest. Like I say, over the years, it's had it. But we're talking dream scenario. It's better for both groups of fish, especially the males, because the females can tend to be a little bit more domineering at feeding time. So for them, absolutely, if they could be in their own environment, you will get the most out of them if you want to cut that risk. But ultimately, for me, I'd say I think if you're controlling the environment, you're reducing the spawning risk massively.
Yeah. Okay. How about keeping a pond of like mixed ages of koi, some tosai, maybe sansai as well? How are you balancing like the nutritional requirements? Is that just by feeding, when you wanted to get growth using hikari growth on its own and just feeding it? Again, it's going to come back to, I suppose, having your tosai in one pond and stuff like that, compared to your nisai and your bigger stuff. But do you think it is possible to have multiple age koi all at the same time and get the best from them?
It is possible, yes, and you will still get them to grow, yes. If we're talking about maxing them out, then no. In a mixed pond, there will always be compromises because there's just so much going on. You've got so many different feeding patterns for a start. Small fish feed completely differently to big fish, so it's not always necessarily the small ones that lose out. It can be the big ones that lose out because by the time they've got to the top, small ones are nailed all food. So you've got that kind of thing to contend with. If you even look at different feeding patterns, chagoi, karashigoi, they'll get at the surface, they won't budge. Kohaku, sanki are naturally scatty feeders. They'll normally up, down, up, down. That's the sort of motion that they feed. Shirutsuri, Showa, again, typically more dominant up at the top. Kajaku, up at the top. Whereas, you might get Shisuis, again, for example, they can tend to be quite scatty. Asagi, I mean, wow, they're just absolutely wild. So, you see just there in natural different feeding patterns, and then the different feeding behaviours at different ages as well. You consider it, and different sizes. You can see how it is a bit of a nuisance. I mean, just to give you an example, so I'm feeding roughly every 2 hours. That's the main program. There's a pond full of bigger fish in here that's very heavily stocked. But they are mixed sizes, so some we're probably talking around 40 cm up to about 60 in that pond. And I am seeing, different progression throughout. You can see one group sort of losing out, but they're still feeding every 2 hours because it's quite heavily stocked. The pond's got a lot of confidence and they're flying. Now, the pond, I have featured this on some videos before with my best stuff in. It's mainly all Dainichis, some male, female, mainly Gosanki. I think bar one Karashigoi, if I remember right, it is all Gosanki. There's no way, and of course they're getting, we're getting up to now sort of 65 cm fish in there as well. Their feeding time it takes them forever. But when you actually watch, and I have watched and studied from afar, which is really, really important, is the feeding behaviour, and they're so scatty. So I've watched them when they know I'm not there, so it's just their normal pattern, and we're coming up to the top with no confidence, very, very cautiously up to the top. You'll get one or two fish reach there. The minute they grab a few pellets, they shoot off, and that causes the sort of that effect amongst the whole batch of fish as well. Then slowly they come back, and that process like that was just being repeated time and time again. So there's no way I could have expected their feeding window to be, say, 10 minutes. Because the amount we'll get in 10 minutes would just be ridiculous. Because again, this is a pond that needs, kilos a day, and you've got to get it in. So in the end, what I've ended up doing is I switched that to every 3 hour program. So I'm now basically allowing them to eat for an hour, and then they've got 2 hours of digestion time in between it for the temperature that we're at. That is working a treat. I remember back the minute I changed that, it changed the game completely. Got them fish stacking the weight on and doing really well. And the pellets are good. The pellets hold up. The pellets will sit on that water for a few hours if needs be and still hold up, not a problem. But that was needed. And all that's happened there is even the Karashigoi I put in, it wasn't in there to begin with, was to try and correct that feeding behaviour. And don't get me wrong, it calmed it a little bit, but it's not stopped it. And what it tends to be now is that the Karashi just sort of is up there living life, mopping pellets up while everything sort of skips around it. Yeah. So it's a fascinating one, but you can just see so many compromises along the way. But having one pond is amazing. To have two, it's just out of realms for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So you have to make the most of what you've got, but always with the smaller toe size. This is where the important bit is, because you knock the maximum centimetres on. The smaller toe size, if you've got a pond full of established bigger fish, if you can establish some kind of grow on setup, just to even push them on to say, if you're buying 15 centimetre fish, to get them to sort of 25, 30 centimetre before you introduce them, it's going to help them a lot more than just going in straight away.
Yeah. It's interesting you talk about like feeding behaviours, because I've got this it's a shower that's got a mouth the size of its head, and it looks like it's going to be a really big fish, but I actually throw my pellets in, and there's a certain few like serial offenders that come up and they'll take 15, 20 pellets down with them. But this shower that's got this ginormous mouth, all it does is it follows around my sorghoi, and it goes right up because it knows where pellets are going, goes for sorghoi and just sucks on the sorghoi's mouth to the point where the sorghoi now has got like a little like blister from this where the shower's been doing it, and it's every single time I put in the pellets, and I love that shower, but it does make me wonder, like, is that sorghoi losing out now because of this other fish? And you can see, I know it sounds crazy, but the fish sees it coming over for it, and it knows what's happening. And I don't know what to think of it, really.
No, there will always be, like I say, compromises in that environment, but it's about making them. And that's not to say I don't want people to think that if you put a small fish in and you've got big fish, it won't grow. It will grow. In that pond I've just mentioned, the first one with a lot of bigger fish, there was a couple of chagois that were in there, I think from having them in a holding net or something, that escaped through, and they were growing really well. Just obviously nowhere near the pace of the pond of chagois just on their own. But so it is possible. I don't want people thinking or getting downbeat. You can do it, but if we're on about maximum growth, then I mean the setups, the amount of separation I have. It's the first thing, to be honest, when I did my work experience in Japan that I'd never even thought of, in all honesty. And then all of a sudden I'm walking around and there's like sheer utsori always on their own. Well, why is that? Well, because we're feeding colour food to everything else, and we don't want to feed colour food to them. So we separate it, and then even right down to like kajaku on their own, because they're greedy buggers. I mean, a lot of us probably know, there's a lot of porky kajaku out there because it's such a natural thing for them. They just eat and eat and eat. So there's no way they're going to want to put them in a pond full of gosanki. So, and just everything separated out. And then it really got me the most when I was doing culling selections, and every pond we always did, we would set a separate net up for fish that were to be kept, but were substantially bigger than everything else. And I saw how much these guys stressed out about them, but sort of reckoning that just a handful of these super dominant fish in there could really strangle everything else in that pond, just through the amount of food they're eating, natural food and everything. So what had happened is, if they were way above that average size and being kept, we'd separate them in a net, then go and re-release them into another mud pond with similar sized fish. So you see the amount of tinkering going on here in order just to keep getting the maximum. And it was a massive eye opener for me.
In ponds where you have fish of like different sizes, and would you consider a mix of like floating and sinking for small, if you have bigger fish and more dominant fish? And
you can. I'd just say more getting your pellet sizes, possibly mixing your pellet sizes. I think I've made my feelings quite clear about the whole sinking food stuff. I think in most scenarios it's quite dangerous unless it's being fed where you are physically watching and you're watching until that food has been consumed. But ultimately, no, the fish will learn to either eat sinking or feed at the top, and I'd just go for the mixed pellets. So at least the bigger fish sometimes struggle getting, you can see that, struggle with the smaller pellets a little bit. So at least there you're giving things a bit of a chance. And you can, even if you're not using a feeder, just feed at a couple of different ends of the pond as well. But ultimately, like I say, you will get results, and you'll get good results as well. But we're talking here about if you're trying to extract every centimetre, like I am, then these levels of separation are an absolute necessity.
All right, so I know you've talked about wheat germ before. Do you think it has a place in promoting chirurgy or the skin color of the head? Do you think that it can help with that?
It absolutely can. Wheat germ, it's good for sort of detoxing. My issue is it seems to be the way wheat germ foods are formulated. Because whatever comes along with the rest of it, this isn't. I've not seen a wheat germ food yet, even to Ikari wheat germ extent, where it's not seemed to negatively impact the body, especially around the gut region. What it might actually be more so, it could be more to do with the fact of actually feeding at them cool temperatures. Because there comes a point really where you do just want to be cutting out, or overfeeding when it's cool as well could be the element. But I have seen people using it as a growth food, so to speak. And the issue is if you're just using that solely in summer, again, I've seen ponds where it's happened and I've not been impressed with the bodies, but also you're going to compromise your Benny. So it's not just a one solution. If you're focusing on that, thinking Shiroji, I can guarantee you the Benny is not going to be hitting its best.
Yeah.
So what I have seen, and this is the levels of Koi, Sakai, Fish Farm, Hiroshima. So Kyorin is the company, the manufacturer behind Saki Ikari and the Ikari brand. They do work with farms like that on a bespoke level. And Sakai has a wheat germ growth food. So it's formulated as a growth food, be similar, obviously, I should imagine, to like Saki Ikari, but heavily using wheat germs. So that's also, it's growing and in bulk. It's formulated to make body proper. And then also using the wheat germ to clean up the Shiroji as well.
Wow.
That to me makes sense as a food, but God knows if that was on the market, God knows what something like that would cost. Yeah. But you know, at their kind of level, they can get into that, you know, and wheat germ on its own, fantastic. But the wheat germ foods themselves, as they seem to be formulated, I'm not all that impressed with.
Mm-hmm.
There's other stuff you can use as well. You know, if we're talking about it in summer, silkworm is actually really good for Shiroji because it promotes really good liver health. There's issues with this as well, though, because I mean, silkworm, again, all different grades, it oxidizes incredibly quickly as well. So the minute you open that packet, very quickly you've let that air in, that stuff's going to be you know, going down in quality. But silk powder, especially, that stuff is known to be phenomenal for Shiroji. And I have had one experience with it a long time ago. It was the Kenkanri food from Japan that had silkworm pupae and silk powder mixed into the pellet. And that stuff was insane, really insane. The skin was superb feeding it, and you got the body and the growth at the same time. But I've not seen that. I mean, that was when I first started. I mean, Jesus, I've not seen it in the UK since around that time, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But again, God knows how much that is these days as well, because I know prices of silkworm is just another thing, because it's not produced as much, that keeps going through the roof.
Yeah, I watched a video on YouTube, and obviously whatever you read on the internet's not true, but I think somebody said that koi can digest the protein from insects a lot quicker than they can from fish, which to me is a bit of a strange one. That a lot of hikari stuff is fish meal, and obviously I'm not questioning the quality of hikari by any means. I have no idea about it, but I can see insects playing a part in koi.
It's all there. It's a good protein and fat source as well. Absolutely, I think it's up there with fish meal. I think you'll have seen, obviously, Coppens had the Midori food that they brought to market, which you're going to be heavily promoting that kind of mechanism. I've not seen any science, but as far as I'm aware, my teaching still, obviously, it's all good. Insect, fish meal, but fish meal's still the one that's dominant, reigning force for me. Let's see where it all heads in future. But I think both are a good choice. Certainly better than the shit old poultry meal that all the cheap foods ram in there. That just shouldn't be allowed. That really does get me going, that one.
Yeah. And
sorry, just seeing a comment in there. Why can't we get the silkworm powder food anymore? I've got no idea. I don't know if there's licensing issues getting it into the country. I know it's expensive. And obviously, by the time we're getting that imported and in, that's going to make it a hell of a lot more expensive. So it's possibly all around costs and all the rest of it. But I have been making some inquiries. We'll wait and see where that goes. Go on, Joe.
Ricky's koi food, that'd be good. Going back to like the yellow hue on the head, I think I asked a similar question last time I was on, but if you saw that yellowy colour in the head where it's not as white as what the Shiroji is, maybe on a Kahaku or something like that, at Nisai, Sansai, is that something that would concern you? 2-3 year old?
Yeah, you've got to look environmental. I mean, this can be a thing. Is it a male? Is it a female fish? That's the question you've got to ask first, because with some males, it is more common to have that slight yellow tinting in the head, which in some cases will fluctuate. It'll fluctuate between sort of periods where there's been a bit of stress versus when they're more relaxed, when they're growing, when they're being conditioned. It's something that you can work through. Again, not all males do it. In the higher end of males, it's becoming more and more common that you get that same quality Shiroji as you would with a female fish. But yeah, likewise, even with a female, is it environmental? What have you been doing? It's quite easy to tint it, like I say, feeding intense colour food through water pollution, all the rest of it. With a good one, which if it is just that stuff you can correct. If it's just something like sort of defect in the quality, that stuff you won't ever change.
Mm-hmm.
So he's really trying to get to the bottom of what's actually been the cause of that happening.
Yeah.
If it's the fish or if it's environmental, because one can be fixed and one can't.
Mm-hmm.
Solid, more expensive than Saki Grove, quite possibly. Believe me, it was a 2 kilo vacuum packed bag, and I remember it being expensive back then. So God only knows now, but we'll see.
This one is probably my last one, but a slightly controversial one.
Yeah.
I almost don't want to ask it because I don't know. So I've watched a lot of videos from like Tim and stuff where he's gone around a lot of farms and he shows a lot of like parent koi, which is phenomenal. But I have yet to see a parent Tancho koi, like a Tancho Kahaku parent koi. Do they exist out there? Do they breed Tanchos as Tanchos, and it's not just the odd one from a normal Kahaku spawn in that kind?
Right. So depends on the breeder. Obviously, it makes sense if you've got fish producing a lot of patterns with a red spot on the head. Then to refine that and bring it in. So I do believe Hoshikin has Tanchos in the set. What you might find is it's not just breeding Tancho with Tancho. You might have like a big Tancho female that's then crossed with Kahaku because you want to obviously keep promoting the Benny quality. Mm-hmm. But Mariju has been one of the big Tancho producers for years now. They've got a really stable set that produces in pretty big numbers. But then the majority you will find do just come from Kahaku spawnings. Mm-hmm. So as you're going along, you can see them at the sort of first, second round of culling where it's going to be. It depends on the volume really. So a lot of breeders don't specialize in. So you got someone like Dainichi, Sakai, Momotaro, the big guys. They're not worried about. They will get a decent amount of Tancho in the Kahaku or Tancho Showa spawnings, whichever it is. But then, big producers. Hoshikin is quite a big Tancho producer. Mariju is a big Tancho producer, so they're going to try and refine it and have the sets to do it.
Mm. Okay.
Because that weren't controversial enough. That one, Joe.
No, well, I suppose my thoughts on it were that maybe they were coming from regular Kahaku spawnings and they were being manipulated to be Tanchos. Was like the way that from somebody who's never been to Japan and never seen a parent Tancho.
No, them spawnings have a lot of fish with Benny on their head. So I've been through them all. It's quite awesome to see, to be honest with you, especially with more Tancho Showa type stuff. You're doing them selections. I was like, wow, the Tancho Showa. It's quite exciting still.
Crazy. But that's it from me.
Cool. I suppose we better do this draw then, haven't we? But thank you very much for your time again, Joe. Some very good questions, mate. And yeah, well done for your efforts at the show as well.
No, and thank you for the auction fish. And thanks everyone that bid on them. And I know we have a conversation with James, but everybody at Yorkshire section, we all really appreciate it, and we're blown away by Ricky's generosity.
Yeah, no, it was a pleasure, mate. I'm just glad to see it's all come together. Oh, I can see Alan's watching. My God, I think you'd have loved to have been a fly on the wall with some of the conversations me and Alan had on Sunday at that show. But needless to say, still waiting to get him here. We are getting a bit closer to getting a bit of content done between us, which I think is going to be quite good fun. So there we have it. So yeah, thanks again, Joe. I'll take you off now. We'll look at focusing on this draw.
Cheers.
Cheers, mate. There we go, folks. Sorry again for the technical errors. I'm glad to say that I can see all the water running out there still, and the horrible buzzing noises has stopped. So yes, right. Let's stop waffling and get onto the draw. Like I say, if you weren't here at the beginning, I have pre-recorded this. I did the draw just before we come on air, so I'll play the whole video now. Just didn't know how to get it up on the screen, and we'll see who our lucky winners are. So just give me a minute. I will go quiet as well because I recorded all the audio and everything as we went along. Right, here we go, folks. Time to do the draw for the Great British Koi Show raffle. So first up, I am going to do the draw for the Dainichi Ginrin Kohaku. I think very sought after one. This, epic fish. Thank you to everyone who's entered. It's been a phenomenal success between this and the raffle. We've really, really boshed it, and raised some great funds for the society. So, yeah, without further ado, let's give it a spin and see who the winner is. Michael Gould, well done. You are the winner of the Dainichi Ginrin Kohaku. Congratulations. We're going to be in touch soon about sorting out delivery for that one. So, yeah, absolutely superb. Thank you. And next one, this is going to be for the Shinoda Hiyotsuri. Again, option whether you ship this or leave it with me growing on. We'll discuss that with the winner. So yeah, let's hit the button and see who we've got. Glenn Pilbrow, fantastic! Congratulations, Glenn. You're the winner of the Hiyotsuri. Again, we will be in touch shortly about you. What you want to do with that. So there we are. Fantastic. Thank you very much. There we have it, folks. I'm sure I know there's a lot of disappointed people out there right now, so sorry about that, but let's bring it back to what it was there. Congratulations to the winners. I think all in all, we've raised about £7,000 between the auction and the raffle for the society there for the show for next year, which is just phenomenal. So thank you all for your support with that one. I'm sure it's going to go to real good use. And we'll see what we can come up with next year. Have some fun with it. I did just see one question actually coming from Colin. Ricky, I know you are wholesale only, but have you ever thought about doing an auction once a month? You've been on form tonight, Colin. I think this would be really popular for the average koi keeper. What I will say is, folks, we're working on a lot of stuff at the minute behind the scenes where we're going to try and open up, what we're doing a lot more. We're trying to get partnered closer with some of the dealers for more events that you guys can take part in. Yes, we have considered, or we're looking at options, the way we can do this. and involve everybody in our community, as well as potentially looking at physical events as well. So lots and lots, but as you can imagine, there's a million things to do, but we're all working very hard behind the scenes, bringing some of this together. And I expect that this autumn you will see the sort of like the first results of that coming through. The NND Mud Pond event was obviously very inspiring and gone down really well. We're already working on the foundations for a whole series of them for next year and for the back end of this year as well. So yeah, stay tuned, folks, and yeah, thank you for your support. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week, hopefully with less technical errors, and yeah, Steve there to sort everything out. So there we are. I'm off for my dinner, so I don't get into trouble, and I'll yeah, see you next week.